All right, so let's begin to set up some of the properties of this principled PBR shader so that it can have some of those, properties of water show up here. So I'll just scroll at the top and make sure I click on my viewport shading. And I also didn't add a HDRI material, so let's quickly do that. So here on the world, so we'll just click on this color section here. I'll just drag this and I'll search for an environment texture and just click over here. Now each time you see this pink, and it's a good time to address this, if you see any pink shader like this, it means it's missing one of the components there. So this, for example, this environment texture is missing a HDRI material. So I'll just go over here and search for my HDRI folder. Oh, there it is. And I'll pick one of these nice sunrise images. So I'll pick this Quanti Dusk. I think that's okay. And I'll just open up that image and you should see it actually rendering around here, so we don't have that issue. So I'll go back over here. And the same thing we just did, if we look over here on the environment, you can actually see for the surface, we're actually adding that image here. So that's just what we did. It's the same process. All right, so let's get back to our object. So what I want to do first is set the transmission weight all the way to 1, and this is going to make this super see-through. I'll get rid of this and also this, and also use T to get rid of that, so that we can just have our water shape over here like that, and we can just see through. So I just set the transmission to 1. Another property of water is that it has an index of refraction of 1 1/3. That's just 1.33. So we'll set that to 1.33 and then drop that in. So another thing is it has a very low roughness. That means it's going to be very refractive. So I'll just drag this to a value of, say, about 0.169, and then we can just clearly see that environment texture there. So we're starting to get the water look, but we're not done yet. Water has, from the examples we saw, I'll just go over to the web browser, we actually see some roughness on the surface. If it's very calm water sitting on the cup, there'll be slight roughness, but for things like that, bodies of water, is some slight roughness around like that. So let's go ahead and add that roughness. So to get that, what we're going to do is to pass some data into our sections right here. So let's first do Shift A, or let's just go to Add, go to Texture, and let's add a noise texture. I'll just place that noise texture here. And let's quickly simulate the bump details for this. So I'll drag out our normal, and I'll click on bump, and I'll take the factor of the noise and then put that into the height input, and already you can see we have a nice looking bumpy surface for this water. Now you don't really have to go super crazy about this. If you're good, you could just leave it like that, but what I'd like to do is to add some additional information. For example, this one for the 4D, it makes it really nice because we can, once we just change this W factor, it actually does that, right? Super nice. So what we can also do is play around with the scale. So I'll just drag out the scale like that to make this more wavy, and to add more detail, we just set our detail back to like 11. I'll just drag this down to like 2 or 1, and let's play around with the distortion a bit and linearity as well, just to add some of that subtle random detail. Now what we can also do is to add some mapping here, so we can change the mapping of this water surface. To do that, let's go and add a texture coordinate, and under the vector, let's add a mapping node. Might not even necessarily need the mapping, so I'll just pass this to vector and take the vector into this vector space here, and we're not seeing any drastic changes happening like that. This just helps to map our objects to a UV space, Now we can try the object space. And you can see we're getting slightly smaller and more detailed water. So I'll just drag this over here. And we can do things like turn off normalize to add some surface details here. Right, so I'll just leave it like that, and we can just drag the scale to, make any of those changes to add more detail to our object. So it all depends on your preference and how you want to make that water surface. So I'll just leave it like this because I like how it's kind of appearing like that. So, and also it's very nice to animate this WD section. That's super nice. So what we can all quickly do is just test out this using different materials. For example, we can go to our world and change this to, say, a skylit garage, just to see how our water is going to be looking like in different lighting conditions. So I believe this is really too noisy. So it just, like I said, it just depends on your preference. We can always change this. So what I also want to do is to add a little bit of base color to this. So I'll just go back and change this. I'm being a bit indecisive here. I'll just leave this on my Quanti Dusk. So what I'll do is to make, add a little bit of color detail to the water. So I'll go back to object, and here, let's just make this slightly bluish, more towards cyan like that. Right, seems to be a good value. So the hex value I'm using is 9D-E7-E6. So I'm using 9D-E7-E6 for this water surface. And truly, you can actually look at this and say, hey, you know what, we're super done. But if you're like me, you know that we can add a little bit of additional details to make this super awesome. So in our next video, we're going to add some more details to make this water look interesting, but it's looking like a nice water material right now.